The mess hall buzzed with chatter, trays clanging, coffee steaming, recruits lined up, plates loaded, everyone focused on finishing quickly. It was routine, until it wasn't. She sat quietly at a corner table, reading a file, coffee untouched, plain clothes, nondescript cap pulled low, but there was something in her posture that made people pause, even if they couldn't place why. A young recruit, full of bravado and the confidence of youth, didn't notice. He barreled past her to grab an empty seat, bumping her shoulder and shoving her aside without even looking. "Hey, watch it!" he snapped. She didn't flinch. She didn't shout. She didn't even stand. She simply lifted her gaze, calm, precise, and waited. The mess hall froze. Something about her presence made even seasoned recruits uneasy, though none could say why. Whispers spread. Who is she? The recruit smirked, thinking he had asserted dominance. The joke was on him. She placed her hand lightly on his arm, not to strike, not to threaten, but enough to stop him cold. The effect was immediate. His smirk faltered. He could feel discipline in her calm, power in her restraint, and authority he hadn't earned. "Step back," she said quietly. The room didn't hear it as a command, but somehow everyone obeyed anyway. The recruit froze, heart racing. He had no idea who he had just pushed aside. And then she removed her cap. The insignia gleamed, a 4-star general. The murmurs turned to stunned silence. Conversations died mid-word. All eyes turned toward her, now unmistakable in her rank and presence. Even the boldest recruit understood the moment he had just crossed a line that could never be undone. This wasn't just a lunchroom. This wasn't just a mistake. The recruit's face drained of color. He stumbled backward, his tray clattering to the floor, eggs and toast sliding across the tiles. Every head in the mess hall turned toward him, but no one moved. Not because they were afraid, because the air itself seemed to command stillness. The general remained calm, rising from her seat with perfect poise. Her eyes didn't glare. They didn't need to. The authority radiating from her made the boldest of recruits shrink instinctively. "Sir," she said quietly, addressing him directly, "you will apologize." He opened his mouth, but no words came. Panic had stripped him of speech. His ego, once so inflated, deflated instantly under the weight of reality. The murmurs in the hall grew louder. Whispers, half questions, half exclamations. "She's a general. She's a 4-star general." A few seasoned soldiers who had seen much in their careers recognized her immediately. Their eyes softened with respect, their posture straightened. This wasn't a drill. This wasn't a role play. This was the real deal. The recruit fumbled out a weak apology. I didn't know, ma'am." The general's gaze didn't soften. Ignorance is not a shield. Respect is earned. Remember that. She gestured for him to step aside and continued walking through the mess hall. Every movement was deliberate, every step measured. The room seemed to shrink around her presence. People instinctively cleared the way. Outside, a few instructors watched the scene unfold from a window. One whispered to another, "You don't push a general, not even by accident." The recruit sank into a chair, humiliated, heart pounding, realizing the consequences could have been far worse. He had made the mistake of treating a leader like an equal without knowing the full weight of her rank. Meanwhile, the general returned to her corner, reopened her file, and sipped her coffee. Nothing had changed for her. Her focus remained sharp, her composure flawless. Yet the lesson had been delivered, loudly, clearly, irrevocably. Because in the military, titles aren't just decorations. They carry power. They carry history. And sometimes, they carry the kind of authority that humbles even the most confident recruit in seconds. The room went quiet again, not out of fear, out of respect earned in a moment. But outside the mess hall, rumors were already spreading. The incident wasn't just a lesson. It was about to make headlines on the base. By mid-afternoon, the story had already traveled beyond the mess hall. Whispers turned into conversations.
Recruits who had witnessed the incident repeated it to friends, instructors, even newcomers who had just reported in. "She's a general," one said. "No, 4-star," corrected another, voice barely above a whisper. "And he shoved her?" The rumor carried a mix of awe and disbelief. Outside observers could feel the weight of her rank without ever seeing her directly. Every officer on base who heard about it understood immediately. This wasn't a minor slap, it was a lesson in accountability and awareness. The recruit, still pale and shaken, tried to return to training, but the memory of her calm, unshakable gaze haunted him. Every drill felt heavier, every step seemed monitored, not by cameras, not by peers, but by the memory of authority wielded perfectly. Meanwhile, the general continued her routine. She didn't flaunt her rank, didn't announce her victory. She moved from one training site to another, observing, instructing, correcting technique, all with her characteristic precision. Yet everywhere she went, people paused, boots stopped, conversations quieted. Respect followed her like a shadow. A senior instructor approached her privately. "Ma'am," he said quietly, "the mess hall, everyone's talking. The recruit, he won't forget this." She didn't look up from her notes. He shouldn't. Discipline begins with awareness. Respect is not optional. He nodded. Understood, but the fact that it was you, well, it amplified everything. Even the other officers are taking notice. She set the folder down, eyes scanning the field outside the window. Good. Let them see that leadership isn't about ego. It's about control, foresight, and accountability. That lesson? It was worth every second. Back in the mess hall, the recruit sat quietly, replaying the moment in his mind. He realized he had been tested, not just by rules, not just by protocol, but by experience, authority, and presence. The general hadn't needed to yell, she hadn't needed to strike. She simply stood as what she was, and the impact was immediate. The ripple effect continued. Recruits who once joked, laughed, or underestimated authority were now cautious, measured, aware that a single misstep could carry consequences beyond expectation. The general's message was clear without a word. Respect isn't given because someone demands it. Respect is earned through action, discipline, and the quiet power of presence. And as the sun began to dip behind the base, the recruits understood. Some lessons don't need repetition. They echo, they shape behavior, they define futures. The base had learned one undeniable truth: never underestimate a leader, even in a simple moment like lunch. The next morning, the base buzzed with a different energy. Training was underway, but the incident from the mess hall hung over everyone like an unspoken law. Even recruits who hadn't witnessed it had heard the story, an unforgettable lesson in authority and restraint. The recruit who had pushed her aside moved carefully now, aware that every action carried weight. He approached drills with caution, corrected his posture, and listened more than he spoke. The shame had faded, replaced by understanding. Respect had been earned, not demanded, not assumed. Meanwhile, the general continued her rounds. Her presence alone commanded attention, but she didn't flaunt it. She corrected form, offered advice, and observed silently. She let her actions teach what words alone never could. Every trainee who had doubted her learned quickly. Authority is not a title, it's behavior, and true leadership is invisible until it moves. Later, the senior officer who had witnessed the incident approached her. "Ma'am," he said quietly, "the mess hall, it changed the atmosphere. Everyone's taking notice. You don't even have to say a word." She smiled faintly, eyes scanning the field. "Good. Let them learn discipline through observation, not fear. Leadership is measured by composure, by awareness, by the ability to respond, never react." Across the base, whispers turned into conversations, conversations into admiration. The story became a benchmark, how a single moment, handled correctly, could redefine respect, reshape behavior, and set a standard for everyone, regardless of age, rank, or pride. The recruit who had pushed her aside finally approached, head low. "Ma'am, I understand now. Thank you for teaching me." She nodded once, curt but firm. No praise, no ego. Remember it. Carry it forward. The rest of the base watched quietly. Some couldn't speak, some could only nod, but the message had been received. Authority unchecked is dangerous. Authority wielded correctly is transformative. And in the mess hall, at that quiet corner table, the general returned to her coffee and her files, as though nothing had happened, though the ripples of her presence continued to spread, shaping the culture of the base, long after the moment had passed. This was united war, where leadership isn't about power, where respect isn't demanded, it's earned in every quiet, decisive action. And for everyone who had doubted, underestimated, or ignored her, the lesson was now unforgettable. A simple moment had changed everything.